Welcome back, everybody, to the Even Your Dynasty show.
We just got breaking news in.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Even Your Dynasty show. We are back with an off-season mailbag episode. Thank you all to everybody that sent in some questions, both on X or in the comment on the YouTube post. Appreciate you guys all reaching out. Appreciate the patience on this video. We had a power outage where we're at, so unfortunately we weren't able to get this out over the weekend, but we will be, get this out, and we'll be having another live show probably Thursday night. Obviously not going to be Friday night. We got Halloween. We're all got plans probably that night. So we'll get one out for you guys on Thursday night. We'll probably talk a bit about the Tony Vitello press conference, as that is scheduled for Thursday morning. Before I jump into the mailbag, as always, for those of you that do enjoy the content, please do hit that like, hit that subscribe. The channel's growing quick. We appreciate all the support. We'll be putting out our next member video later this week, so keep your eyes out for that. It's going to be a Giancarlo Cio prospect breakdown, so be ready for that one. Jumping into the first question, Jen Y sent over, did you guys see this driveline piece on how the Blue Jays improve their players hitting? It reminds me of our success in 2021. Any ideas of who they should target for a hitting coach? Well, the first person that comes to mind would be the guy that was the hitting coach during that 2021 season. That was Donnie Ecker. I think he'd be the first name that comes to mind as far as like guys they could target that is available out there. Another couple names. We've obviously seen what David Popkins has done with the Toronto Blue Jays offense this season. They do have a couple assistants there, Lou Iannotti and Hunter Mentz. Those are the assistant hitting coaches in Toronto. I would imagine they've had some involvement there. They have some driveline background with Popkins, so that those could be a couple guys that make sense. Other than that, I'd imagine someone like Tony Vitello has some guys in mind for who he wants to reach out. Same with Posey. They've hopefully seen the success with the bat speed training and everything that they've done in Toronto, and you'd like to see them go with somebody kind of more on that side of things. They've gone old school with a guy like Pat Burrell and David Miner. Hasn't worked. Obviously they had Justin Veely here. It didn't really work with him. I think they're going to need probably more on the analytical side to go with some of the old school guys, but I think they've reached the point where they need to probably have a more analytical guy running it, but somebody that understands the importance of good swing decisions, putting the ball in play, not striking out a ton. And that's something you've seen in Toronto with a ton of success this season. So those are some of the names that I have kind of in mind right now. Lynn asked, Vitello might hopefully light a fire under some of the Giants' young players. How will that play with the veterans and over a full season that he has never experienced? I see Posey or Zach making out the lineup cards and using their own analytics and their hand-selected coaches. Tony won't be trusted to do much except motivate the team. Well, Buster, there has been the report that Buster is going to be more involved with selecting coaches, but he is also came out and said that the next head coach is going to be able to make, or the next manager is going to be able to make a lot of the decisions regarding the coaching staff. So I do think it's going to be a little bit more collaborative. I don't think they're going to just steamroll Vitello and choosing his whole staff. And on the flip side of that, I don't see Buster as just going to make out all the lineups. Now, that said, Vitello operated fairly analytically in Tennessee. So there is probably going to be a heavy dose of that going into how they set up the lineup cards, who's playing each day, all that, some of the bullpen decisions. But, these are valid concerns, I think, surrounding Vitello as the coach or as a manager, is that he hasn't done an over 162 game season. He hasn't had to play 6 games a week every week, some weeks 7 games a week every week for 6 months. There's a whole lot more that goes into managing the starting rotation, the bullpen, the pitching staff as a whole by itself, then managing workloads on different players. When they're just playing a weekend series, a lot of these guys can play 3 games and be fine. Not every guy can play every day. You're going to have guys like Chapman and Adamas that post up for 160 games if healthy, and Rafi Devers obviously had the rare feat of getting 163 last season, but not every guy can do that. So they're going to have to manage workloads. That's going to be something he's going to have to learn. And yeah, I think for sure the younger players are going to buy in. You're seeing a ton of excitement, especially out of guys that are in the minor leagues. Some guys that played for him, some guys had committed to playing for him, but then ended up getting drafted. Some guys, competed against them. And a lot of these guys are excited, but it's valid to wonder how it's going to fit with a veteran that's, 30 years old making 10 times as much money as him. How are they going to be? Are they going to be as receptive to that? So, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But on the flip side, I don't think he's going to be there strictly just to motivate the team either. A lot of times we've heard the saying that a team is an extension of their managers, kind of their personality and everything. I would expect the team is going to be more brash and bold, and there's going to be they're going to be more dynamic, and he's a guy that kind of helps foster that environment. He encourages these guys to be who they are and to play with flair, and it's going to be a more exciting bunch to watch. But I do think he's going to have to tone it down for 162. You just can't keep that. I don't think it's sustainable to keep that energy up for 162 games from his standpoint. But I do think he's going to, set an expectation with the team. He's going to hold them to a higher standard, but he is going to encourage that environment. So it'll be really interesting. And I think it's going to be very imperative that he's going to get an experienced, good coaching staff around him. That includes a hitting coach. I would love to see them keep keep Garvin and JP Martinez. I would love to see them get an experienced bench coach. Anton Richardson is out there as a possible, hasn't re-upped his contract with the Mets. You could maybe see him come back to first base. He did a great job with they had Juan Soto almost steal 40 bags this season, which is insane. So that's someone you could potentially bring back. Hallberg did a pretty good job at third base before Matt Williams came over. I didn't like Hallberg a ton at first base, but I thought he actually did a pretty good job at third. So as a third base coach, so that's a possibility. And the other thing with Richardson is he got a lot of credit from Drew Gilbert himself, who was with the Mets obviously before the Tyler Rogers trade, on helping him with this outfield defense. So could help the outfield defense, which the Giants have greatly struggled in the last couple of years. But getting a good coaching staff around Vitello, I think that's got to be priority number one going into this offseason. Michael Monreal says, "Hey boys, thoughts on Posey and company pursuing Bo Bichette? Pitching should absolutely be the focus, and he'd be pricey for a second base option. But a guy that just racks up hits is a perfect fit for this lineup, in my opinion." I would agree that Bo Bichette fits the offensive profile that this team needs. He would be kind of a dream addition as far as what they need going forward. I would almost argue even more so than a Kyle Tucker. I think Bichette could actually be a plus defender at second base. He's hit out. If you throw away last season, 2024, if you throw that season away, the rest of his career, he's about a 310 hitter. And he posted those numbers again this season. He had 94 RBIs for Toronto. He is their lead. He was their team leader in RBIs. He's a legit top of the order table setter, also knocks guys in, hits for some pop, good for, being among the league leaders in batting average. Does have some chase part of his game, but elite bat to ball skills. He's kind of what they need, but he's going to be expensive. He's, this would be another long-term deal to another infielder. Is the team willing to put that out there, especially with the need for pitching? And I don't think they are, but if this team is thinking we're close and we can get to the dot, we can catch the dot, or not catch the Dodgers, but compete with them and close the gap a little bit on them, maybe they're willing to go up over the competitive balance tax and pay the tax this season and, go kind of all, not necessarily all in, but get really aggressive and try and get him in a starter and another, fix the bullpen and all sorts of things. And if they do, then I'd be excited. I've liked Bichette. I thought they should try and trade for him last season. I thought it made sense as a not necessarily buy low, but buy lower candidate. But obviously, they went and got Willie Adamas, which has worked out great for them so far. And now Bichette's going to cost a lot more money. So, but he is young. That is the positive. You'd be buying out quite a few prime years. So that would be the positive. We'll just have to see what the contract looks like. I think he'll get probably at least what Willie got, which was 182, probably more. Wouldn't shock me if his clears 200 million, especially when you look back a few years at the deals Xander Bogaerts got and Trey Turner got, and those guys were all older than Bichette. It'll be kind of interesting to see what his contract looks like. Is he going to want to go only somewhere that he can play shortstop? Is he willing to go play second base? Those are other questions about it. But as I said, it does give him some flexibility. If you trade for, or if you sign a guy like Bichette, it opens the door for trading a guy like Casey Schmidt that could help you bring in, potentially some pitching that might be cheaper than going and signing a free agent, younger and cheaper possibly. So it's, I think, a possibility, more possible than I think some of the other options we're going to talk about. But it is a little bit tricky as far as if they're going to be willing to have their whole infield locked up for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, depending on who you're looking at. So that's going to be the hard part. Next, William Rively, thoughts on Cody Bellinger coming here. I've mentioned his name a lot in the past. You go back 2 years ago when he was a free agent, the first year we had this show. He was the guy I wanted to see them go get the most. I felt like he was 28 years old. They could have gotten to a long-term deal. He would have done a lot for helping the defense, the base running. He's a solid bat, middle of the order bat. I thought he made a lot of sense at the time. Now, 2 years later, he's 30 years old. He's still a good player. Like, that's not the issue. I just don't like the idea of giving him 7 years now when he's already 30. When he was 28 and you're getting 2 extra prime years in a 7-year deal or 8-year deal, then it made more sense to me. Now that you're not getting the benefits of the prime years at the front end of the deal, I don't like the idea as much. He certainly would help their defense in the outfield. That's been a big struggle for them. So from that point of view, it does make sense, but I don't personally like it unless it's going to be on like a 4-year deal, which I would imagine with Boris as his agent, he's going to either get more than that or he's going to take another short-term opt-out deal with a team where he can in a hitter-friendly park. Next, John Jacobs asks, is there a chance Bryce Harper is traded to the Giants since he's a friend of Vitello? I do think that actually makes it kind of an interesting fit. The fact that he's got a little bit of a history with Tony Vitello, not playing for him, but they seems like there's a friendship, mutual respect, however you want to put it, between the two. So maybe that he would be open to coming here. And I want to add also, Benjamin Contreras asked, Harper didn't want to sign with SF. Would he really want to come here in a trade? So that's going to be the other part of this question. And he did mention that it wasn't, he actually has tweeted out many times that he loves the city of San Francisco. And I don't think he necessarily didn't want to come here. I just think there were a couple things that gave him pause. Number one, the kind of instability and uncertainty surrounding the fact that they basically told him Bruce Bochy was going to be gone after that season. So he didn't know who was going to be coaching the team in the future. There was a lot of questions. The roster wasn't good at the time. Of course, neither was the Phillies, but then you're also factoring in ballpark. And the fact of the matter is he got more money from Philadelphia. He took the money. So I don't think it necessarily was he didn't want to come to San Francisco. It was just kind of a variety of factors that ended up making him choose Philadelphia over San Francisco. But I would say that it maybe opens the door a tiny bit if this really goes south to the point that he actually wants to be traded. But I don't honestly think he's going to get traded. I think ultimately he stays in Philadelphia. The fit is also a little bit tough when you talk about going to San Francisco. He's 33 years old now, I believe. He's kind of exiting his prime, which, those comments offended him, but that's just the truth. Like, he's exiting his prime years. Doesn't mean he can't still be a really good player, but he's already made the transition to first base. He's open to going back to the outfield, but I don't think any of us could trust him in right field at Oracle Park. So now you're talking about having to move him to left field. Well, that means you're going to have to go trade Ramos, which I know there's a lot of people that are probably ready to do that. I'm not so certain that the best choice is to trade a guy that's shown he can be an all-star bat, and at times has shown the ability to be an above-average defender, though last season he was like historically terrible. So I'm not sure it's necessarily the best decision to go ahead and just trade Ramos, although you could probably go get pitching, or he'd end up going back to Philadelphia in that trade. So it gets a little muddy as far as like how you go about that if you pulled off that trade. But ultimately, I just don't think Philadelphia, and I don't think he's going to waive his no trade clause, and I don't think Philadelphia is going to actually trade him. And if you do you really want to trade the remaining contract for a 33-year-old? That's how you end up in kind of in contract hell with a player in a couple of years. It's a tough spot to be. And then the last one we're going to do just kind of a fun one. This isn't really off-season related. SF Giants Hangout asks, who's the best player on the Giants right now? And to me, it kind of depends on what your definition is. Best hitter is probably easily Rafi Devers. Best all-around player, it's probably Matt Chapman if you want to factor in the power of the defense, base running, all that. I love what Willy Adames did for the team last season with the ability to play above average defense at a premium position at shortstop, but also, give the power production, hit 30 homers, drive in, I think he finished with 87 RBIs, had a great season overall at the plate, especially after the horrible start he had. But I would lean Rafi Devers currently. I think even though he's not the everyday first baseman right now, he showed some ability to be a plus defender there. And the bat, at times when he would get going, the whole offense would get going. He has a difference making bat. He's one of the top 15-ish hitters in the entire game. Truly elite presence in the box. So hopefully a little bit less up and down next season for the Giants, but we'll kind of see. I mean, he's a left-handed presence they haven't had since Bonds. That's just the reality. So exciting. Can't wait to see a full season of him. Can't wait to see a full season, hopefully, of Bryce Eldridge. And Willie, and hopefully Chapman doesn't have the injury issues next season, and we can with Jung Hoo, and we get a nice solid core in the lineup, and hopefully they can add to that this offseason. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have next membership video out later this week. Live show Thursday night. We'll talk about the Tony Vitello stuff and anything else that maybe comes up. Hopefully we hear some coaching hires made, although I wouldn't be shocked if we don't hear any of that until either after the World Series or at least after his press conference on Thursday. So go Giants, go Blue Jays. America's team's in Canada right now, so go Blue Jays. Hopefully they can take care of LA in the series, because God knows none of us want to see the Dodgers win the World Series. And we'll catch you all next time.